Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for joining us this Saturday. I think it's September 30th? September 30th, 2017. This is your weekly live event that I call Office Hours as a nod to my time in university. That's what they called the time when you could go and hang out with whoever was teaching your class, if it was the teacher's assistant or the professor or whatever. And you could ask them questions or interact and do stuff like that. And so this is your live event. And, right. So questions. The chat is open. Good morning, JC's Radiant Ray. Hello. Vocalists around the world. I am very curious. While I too, am very ready for today's session. I am curious what you are so ready for today's session. I wonder what's going on. Lovely emoticon skills there. We've got all manner of instruments, microphones, saxophones. Thank you very much. Guitars. I'm not sure if that's a cello or a violin or viola. It kind of looks like it could be a double bass as well. And of course, a nice set of headphones. Welcome, Striker. Mars, splendid. Advice for singing through heavy allergies. Oof. Ale? Hey. Okay, so first and foremost, Mars, splendid. I'm going to dive right in. Something occurred to me last week, which I wanted to mention, which is that if you, I really do my best to get through everyone's, hello Heidi, welcome. I do my best to get through everyone's questions. If it looks like I'm getting near the end of our hour of time together, and I haven't quite gotten to your question, then once the event's over, write your question in the comments rather than the chat. I can't always look at the chat after the fact, although there's I forget who it is that very kindly transcribes it and sends it via sequencer. But if it looks like I'm not going to get to your question, drop it in the comments and I'll answer it afterwards. That occurred with several people last week, and I thought that was I never really thought about it. So I was like, well, this is a great idea. Why not do that? I can always answer them ready. Emoticons are required. We have to have a full band. I love it. Excellent. Okay, but I digress. So first of all, Sequencer, a global voice. It's on Facebook. That's now our official name. We can't change the name now because we have grown beyond you after you get past a certain number of people in a group, you can't change the name. So this is it. Right. So Sequencer, if I'm not going to get to your question, put it in the comments. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're subscribed. Okay. Heavy allergies and respiratory gunk. Well, first of all, if you are in the care of a general practitioner or a doctor, they may be able to help you with that to a certain extent. Hydration will be really helpful, at least in terms of thinning out the mucus to a certain extent and maintaining good vocal health. If you're coughing a lot or you get a lot of post-nasal drip, that can irritate the vocal fold and make singing really uncomfortable and perhaps in certain instances ill-advised. So if you haven't seen your doctor yet, you may consider seeing your doctor and see what they have to say about it. I cannot advise you in those matters. And unfortunately, that's really about it that I can really say about the matter. Clients I've had in the past who have really bad allergies have had varying success with their coping strategies. Most of the time, it involves some type of either over-the-counter or prescribed medication to try to keep it under control. Yeah. Good day, Striker LA. Hello, Heidi. Hello, just Juan. Happy to be here. Love these sessions. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Madeline, hi. Totally forgot about this. We're gonna get through a couple of these here. Natasha, hello. Welcome. JC's rating Ray, yes, emoticons, wonderful. Do you have any tips on improving resonance? Yeah, well, for starters, check out the resonance videos. I'm kind of overdue on those. They're a little bit, they're from early on when I first started making videos, but the actual content in the video is no less relevant today than when I initially did it. You could also check out the Singing in the Mask video or Mask Resonance. That is really the way that we cultivate that resonance has a lot of impact on the overall resonance of our voice, and in particular has a lot of impact on how we are perceived to have resonance in our voices. So the cultivation of mask resonance, either the absence of it or the presence of it, it enriches the overall tone quality of our voices, and in the upper register or zona de passaggio has a great impact on whether or not we're perceived of as being in tune. But overall resonance of the voice in the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, your chest range, is largely about vowel alignment, airflow, and release. And if you're cultivating good alignment of your vowels and you're cultivating good airflow, and by that I mean subglottic air pressure below the epiglottis, then the resonance comes as the system becomes more optimized and you gain release of the vocal fold. And by release, I mean it's only using as much muscular engagement as is entirely necessary. I hope that helps. George, don't recognize your user ID. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you got a question, pop it in the chat. That's what we're here for. Deborah, advice on dealing with phlegm. Kind of talked about that. That's kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier in the event regarding allergies, because oftentimes when those with really severe allergy problems will have a lot of phlegm around the vocal fold as the body's response to keep the vocal fold healthy. If it's just phlegm, then you may consider evaluating your hydration. You may need to warm up a little bit more on a given day than another day. Also, I would evaluate how you are phonating the day before you wake up with a lot of phlegm, or and if you're singing in the afternoon, you find that you've got a lot of phlegm. If I have had a really, really heavy day of singing and teaching, then I know that the next day, so like, for example, last week on Thursday, I think I had 6.5 hours of lessons. Now, quite frankly, that's a little bit more than I should have booked. I shouldn't have actually done that many hours, but my schedule is very fluid, and so it worked out that way. I know that on Friday, it's going to take me a little bit more time to warm up because my body's response to that volume of teaching, which involves a lot of talking and a lot of demonstration, and of course, as a singing instructor, I demonstrate things both correctly and incorrectly to try to help people understand what the differences are. So I know on Friday when I wake up, it's going to take me a little bit more time to warm up. And I have to be very conscious of hydration and all that kind of stuff. So that is also something to consider in your battles with phlegm. Huvian, the Black Heart is cool. I've not seen that before. JC's rating Ray. Jeff, I have asked sings one line in unison and the next in a somewhat high soprano voice in the same verse. Cool. I'm a soprano and the unison part ends near the bottom of my range without a break. Any tips? You're singing this tomorrow. Yeah. Practice the interval between the two parts. Start from a descending standpoint. So like, let's just say, all things being equal, if I were going to end there and then I had to sing there, and that helps me to remember the kind of energy and engagement that is required for the high note. And then when I finish my part, I missed the note. Thinking of the tonic instead of the second scale degree, but you get the idea. And that can help to bridge that gap between the two notes. Yeah, that's really that is the way to go about working on that. Work it from the top down, work it from the bottom up, get it in context with the lyric. Yeah, that is how I would have you work on that. You may also do it with the lip trill a little bit just to work on seamless airflow. That would help as well. And then of course work it with the vowels in question, ultimately with the words too. Tadeus, hello, pardon me. Striker, P&D, post-nasal drip. Hello, Mrs. Webster. Mrs. Webster, I was thinking about your comment regarding this week's video, which, by the way, now, sorry about that. For those of you that are on the newsletter, I forgot to mention that. For those of you who are on the newsletter, so sorry about the link to the video. I was trying to set the newsletter to go out at a more appropriate time, and it was an epic fail. So it came out a day early, and so I got several, to say the least, very kind emails indicating that the link did not work. It will work now, and that video is live. But yeah, Mrs. Webster did a bit of a deep dive on the harmony stuff. I hope it helps. I have the suspicion that the video is going to generate more questions than answers. But that's actually quite good, because I'd like to talk more about harmonization, and I'd like to do more videos about the practice of harmonization. I just didn't feel like I could, in terms of giving you like next level content, I didn't feel like I could do a video that didn't at least dive into the theory, the music theory behind harmonization and how we construct harmony parts, and why sometimes things work out really well and why sometimes they don't at all. And this video is an attempt at that. Today, I've got swallow reflex when I sing. Help. Airflow and engagement, vowel alignment. I mean, cultivating release around the vocal fold mechanism is a process. It doesn't necessarily all happen at once. So focus on your engagement, focus on your vowel alignment, keep practicing. Thanks, Jeff. I have a choral performance tonight. Mara Splendid, you're very welcome. Roberto, how's it going, Jeff? I think things are pretty good this morning. It's a lovely sunny day here in Northern California. My voice is feeling good. I think I'm on song 279 of my songwriting project for this year. So I've written 279 songs thus far this year. So far I've been working on producing one, which I hope to release in the near future, but I need to re-record it. Things are good. Thank you for asking. Tips on live performances. I always get fatigued because I get too hyped up and excited. Well, can you be specific? Is it vocal fatigue or physical fatigue? If it's vocal fatigue, then it's something about your phonation and how you're treating your voice during your performance. If it's physical fatigue, well, you know, I think there's probably equal. There's an intellectual component of this too. If your gig is 3 hours long, and you know that going into it, then I would recommend you cultivate the mental headspace that's going to allow you to pace yourself. And you can build pacing into your set list to a certain degree. You could have like a chill tune or a couple chill tunes. Like when I write a set list for myself, I purposely started off with 2 or 3 tunes that don't really require me to be, at full throttle and full at full capacity for whatever it is I'm doing. I try to pace myself from the very beginning. But let me like pop in with a little bit more information about that, and maybe I can help more. Stryker, my current week's lessons focus on singing the word and, not soft but hard. So, Frank Sinatra, my way, I'm having difficulty engaging the air flap. The name, I wonder if you're talking about the epiglottis. Any tips? Thyroarytenoid? Depends on the range, Stryker. If it's and also let me know if it's the epiglottis. If you're having, okay, so if you're not really getting the epiglottis to pop, that would be unusual. Usually that's the kind of default. And if you need to reacquaint yourself with the action of it, what you can do is just kind of take a breath and hold it without really engaging, like a sort of like I'm lifting a heavy thing, like a and cough it out. That'll give you a sense of the sensation of the epiglottis engaging and holding back the air column. The problem with that is that is not entirely an accurate way of utilizing it in phonation that is healthy and sustainable. I am reminded of a lesson I had a long time ago. It's the only voice lesson I ever had where I left it and had lost my voice during the lesson. And it was because the instructor was having me do repeated, really, really aggressive glottal attacks. So we're singing like a... And they had me do that for about 5 minutes, and it got painful, and eventually I ended up losing my voice for 2 days after that lesson. Now, to be fair, I think they were trying to teach me how to do a glottal attack without fully weighting the vocal fold, and I did not figure that out. So there are glottal attacks and there are glottal attacks. We can use a glottal attack from time to time. There are times when it is necessary to put a glottal attack in a phrase so we have good intelligibility. So that, like when you have a vowel, a word that ends with a vowel, and if the next word starts with the same vowel, from time to time, it might be advantageous to put a glottal attack in there so that we understand that the word has changed and we get good intelligibility. The thing is that if you're going to have a glottal attack, that's a fairly well-balanced tonal onset. You can hear there's an ever so slight glottal attack in that one. And that's because I have enough engagement in subglottic pressure that the epiglottis isn't really clamping down to hold back the column of air. And so you get just a little pop. Now, I have to, this is my opinion, okay? And this has not been ultimately vetted in the resources that I regularly reference when I answer questions. But I feel that I've developed that coordination through practicing with a little bit of vocal fry, but the opposite way that you typically do it. So instead of going, hey, starting with the vocal fry and then adducting the vocal fold and getting a full sound, go the other way. Coordinating the adduction of the vocal fold, and again, this is experience in my opinion, and it's not fully vetted, but practicing with that a little bit seems to heighten my awareness of what's occurring around the vocal fold and allows me to use only as much of the epiglottic closure over the vocal fold to get the amount of glottal attack that I deem necessary or sustainable in the range I happen to be in. I hope that helps, and I hope that's what you're talking about, because I know I kind of went on about that when you really only said vocal flap, but I suspect that that's the epiglottis in talking about how you're describing that. Mr. Prater, I noticed that my voice sounds different when singing with an acoustic guitar versus an electric guitar. Is this in my head, or is it actually a thing? Weird question, I know. Hey, man, awesome question. And I'm a big believer, though. If you're wondering about it, I suspect someone else is wondering about it, too. Quick station identification. My name's Jeff. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Find us on Sequencer if you want to continue the discussion, which is on Facebook. I am investigating another platform. Someday I'll do that. A global voice. Sequencer. A global voice. If I don't get to your question, put it in the comments. This is the chat. The comments are separate from this video. Put it in the comments and I can answer it later if I don't get to your question today. Okay, so there's two things, Mr. Prater, 86. One, depending on the size of your acoustic guitar and the weight and size of your electric guitar, they could either impede or not impede your ability to expand adequately and support your voice. So that can have an impact, like the subglottic pressure, the airflow that you're generating over the vocal fold will have a totally different sound on your voice. If one is particularly a lot louder or softer than the other one, how you treat your voice may change as well. If you are getting a little bit of resonance of your voice in the body of the acoustic guitar, that could also change the way your voice sounds to you in the immediate proximity of the guitar. And finally, I would suggest to you that this is a lot of the reason why we have different arrangements of songs. This is why, I have a record called The Atlantean. There's one song on there called Forever in One Day. I recorded that song 7 times before I felt like I got it right. And I'm still not really happy with it. Like it's on the album and I'm reasonably satisfied with that recording of it, but I'm not. I feel like I could still keep on recording that song. This is why we record things over and over again. This is why I have 4 guitars, because I might not like the sound of one guitar, the way it sounds with my voice, the way it sounds with the song, the way I want the song to be perceived. This is why musicians tend, guitar players especially, will collect instruments. They'll have all these different guitars because they're looking for a certain affectation, a certain sound that's gonna, in their mind, I think ultimately it evokes an emotional response from them that they in turn want to hopefully invoke in their listener as well. Tadeus, are there any vowel modifications for a more thyroarytenoid dominant mix? Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's more about airflow than it is going to be about. But you see, that's because I suspect that you're wanting that because you want a fuller sound. But you won't get a fuller sound by having a mix that's overbalanced to the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. You'll get a fuller sound by having a well-aligned, well-balanced system that resonates fully. So, I'm really, really sorry. I feel like that in some respects, if that's what you're going for, then I think that's a kind of that's not how I would address that. I don't think that's necessarily. By having a more thyroarytenoid dominant mix, you will not get a fuller sound. You're going to sound duller, and you're going to sound like you're out of tune, and you're going to induce vocal fatigue. It's probably what will happen. So go for balance. Go for really, really adequate engagement, subglottic pressure. That will increase resonance. That will give you the fuller sound. Check out, it's an old article by Scientific American called The Human Instrument. It's like from 2007. Check it out. It explains it very, very good. Thanks. You're welcome. Tadeus, where would I require a crico? That's not really a thing. Cricothyroid dominant singing voice is what that is. And if you're talking about cricothyroid dominant singing voice, that's above the secondo passaggio. Susan, good morning. I love the new video with vowels for alto voice. Really helps to expand the range. Brilliant. That would be a lovely byproduct of that expanded vowel palette. Those are the vowels that we modify towards as we expand through or extend our range through the zona di passaggio and above the secondo passaggio. Thank you. Natasha, this is going to sound stupid. No, I don't think that. I really think all of your questions, what is it? Second person plural, you, the collective you, including myself, us, one. All questions are welcome. No such thing. But how does it help you sing better? Well, I feel it's more controlled when you are engaged. That's a great question, and honestly, kind of a rather profound question, because of course you can find conflicting viewpoints on this. The engagement. When I use the word engage, I use the word engage as a substitute for the word support, because historically and in common terms, the word support has been used so much to talk about what you're meant to do with your air in singing that it's become meaningless. That it doesn't actually mean anything, and yet teachers use that word all the time without actually telling you anything more than support. That's like me telling you to sing in tune, right? If you're not singing in tune, me telling you to sing in tune, unless you're already really well trained, won't have any impact. My job is to help you understand why you're out of tune, and then show you the necessary skills that will help you to sing in tune. That, to me, is what teaching is. If I tell you to support, I'm doing the same thing. Support. What does that even mean? Well, you're supposed to sing from the diaphragm. Well, the diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. How do I do that? Well, you just do it. There's more to it than that, and it's not terribly difficult to explain. So I use the term engaged to mean the lifting of the rectus abdominis muscles and the inner and outer oblique muscles towards the sternum. The sternum is your breastbone, where your ribs connect. So the rectus abdominis muscles are these muscles here. So we tense or engage those and lift them towards the sternum. The diaphragm resists this. So the diaphragm tries to stay in a descended position, because when you've expanded, the diaphragm comes down. And that creates the subglottic pressure, airflow. And that's not exactly synonymous, but you'll notice that recently I've been changing my language as I continue my studies in an effort to try to be as effective and as helpful as I possibly can. Because in truth, the rate of the flow of air over the vocal fold as you ascend does not increase by an appreciable amount, though you'll hear that very commonly. If you want to go higher, you have to increase the flow of air. The subglottic air pressure, the column of air below the epiglottis, however, does increase in pressure, and that's what helps the vocal fold stay released. That release makes for a good transition through the zona di passaggio. So we have to have the engagement to maintain the subglottic air pressure, which allows the vocal fold to stay released. That means that you get good singing, you don't get overly fatigued, and you get good registration events. You sing over the secondo passaggio effectively. I hope that helps. Yasmin, hello. Please tell us how to sing with power and resonance. Cultivate good alignment of your vowels and good subglottic air pressure so that you have a steady and reliable rate of flow of air over the vocal fold. That would be the short answer to that question. In truth, my entire channel is about that. every video that I've done answers that question in some small way. There are the vast and continually expanding number of videos because every one of us is slightly different. Every one of us has different needs in terms of what they're working on in their repertoire selections. And different challenges. So for some people, the ah vowel is really challenging. For others, the oo vowel is really challenging. The wide variety of warm-ups, which are really technical exercises, gives you the ability to choose the video that will focus on the particular challenge that you are facing. That's also why I wrote the guidebook, was to help you to self-evaluate and to find more easily the videos that would help you work on what's challenging you. Karina, hello. Mrs. Webster at Hoovian, at Stryker, at Karina. Rin! Hey Jeff, how does coffee and black tea affect the voice both immediately and throughout the day? Okay, very good question. And that reminds me, I'm about due for a little coffee break myself. Okay, so you're going to get a lot of conflicting answers to this question. If you asked Katie Lang, she would tell you under no circumstances should you have these things. She's of the opinion that you cultivate your voice over your entire lifetime. I agree with that. But I really like coffee. I really, really like coffee. So, you know, I'm gonna keep on drinking coffee until I find an incredibly compelling reason why I should stop. The main thing that the main problem with those beverages is the temperature. So if you're about to sing, I wouldn't recommend you have a nice hot cup of coffee because the temperature differential is going to irritate your vocal fold a little bit. The caffeine contained in coffee and black tea can have varying degrees of effect on a given individual. So for me, the temperature is a bigger issue than the actual caffeine. That being said, in coffee, there's a bit of residue and stuff that tends to linger on the vocal fold. I find that, a couple glasses of water and an hour after I've had my cup of coffee, I'm phonating pretty much as I always do. I find tea to be a little bit more challenging, probably because I tend to drink it faster, and so it's a bit hotter. Also, the dairy in tea, I have tea in the sort of English way, so I put milk in it. And milk tends to not terribly help with my vocal fold. That's not necessarily true for everyone. For some people, it will not have any effect whatsoever. And as I've said before, I'm quite happy having yogurt and then singing while I'm eating yogurt. It doesn't seem to bother me in any real way. So yeah, I would watch out on the temperature. Give yourself a little bit of time. Make sure you're maintaining good hydration, and you may do a little bit of A/B testing and see if the black tea, if there's any appreciable difference if you're having the tea or not having the tea. Pardon me. Wolvian, I'm trying different ways, but you helped me so much. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Karina, hello, Stryker. Deborah, when I navigate the passaggio, my head voice is more operatic, as I'm classically trained, but my chest voice is more pop. Volume stays the same, but it sounds like two different voices. Tips. I would assess the mask resonance. Assess your mask resonance, and I would also evaluate any and to what degree you are modifying your vowels through the zona de passaggio. Mrs. Webster, hugs to you, Jeff. You are a gift to all. Thank you very much. So grateful for the harmony video. Looking forward to diving in. There is a perfect place to start. I hope so. I hope it is, Mrs. Webster. I hope it is. Jason Radiant Ray. Thanks, Jeff. To be honest, I'm thinking of not singing the last note of the low part. Singing the high part is not my challenge. No, that is not true. Not poor form. Not poor form. That is a good adaptation. And, if you don't get it this time, you can get it next time. They're very... just... Yes, we want to sing the parts, but sometimes as we've talked about before, people hear with their eyes, which is to say, if you go, they may very well hear in their minds that you are singing the last note. But that is a very good adaptation, and you can, practice it today. Try to get it. If you don't get it, then consider a little bit of air singing, but then practice it some more and get it next time. When in doubt, lay out. That's a time-honored tradition in music. When in doubt, lay out, and then get back in when you can. Karina, have you heard about drink in the sound? Can you explain this? I think inhalare voce, so any exercises. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these metaphors for inhalations and phonation are great. I haven't really heard that before. I've talked about inhalare la voce on several different occasions. Every time I do, I have to go back and reread it because it's rather similar to my own ethos on singing, but it uses a lot more metaphorical ways of trying to elicit responses out of singers than what I prefer, which is more of an explanation of the physical structures and what is occurring, and then methods to achieve the appropriate orientation of those structures. So I'd have to go and read about that, Karina, which I'm happy to do. So I'll just have to have a look at that. But what I recall from reading that before, and I believe I recall correctly, most of that is consistent with my teaching, which means that the exercises on my channel are consistent with that practice as well. It's just a way of changing your thought about it. If you're thinking about drinking in the sound, you're not actually drinking anything. You're just imagining a certain mode of doing it. And I suspect that the effect there is to try to get you to lower the larynx. If that's true, my one particular problem with that is that if you are artificially lowering the larynx at the inhalation, then you are depressing the larynx. That muscle engagement may or may not be advantageous for what it is you are about to sing. Maintaining flexibility and neutrality of the larynx has been a much more effective way of being well prepared for the next phrase. It's not about having it as low as you possibly can or depressing it physically. That may, 99.9% of the time, will not be advantageous for the next phrase you're about to sing. Having the structures be released so that they can adopt what is necessary for the next note of your phrase that's what is that is the sort of accepted rule to go by. That's what I've mostly learned in studying Richard Miller's works and the works of other instructors whose pedagogical approaches I agree with and think are consistent with good phonation. Dawn, hi from Bay Farm. Hey, I hope you're still there. I'm giving you a wave. Your tip about the soft palate a few weeks ago was wonderful, brilliant. Plan to message you regarding lessons. Wow, awesome. Meanwhile, any ideas on how to open the backwards megaphone? Yeah, cool. I should say too, by the way, if some of you have been hanging out waiting for me to answer your questions, if I do not get to your question today, please pop it in the comments and I will answer it after the live event has ended. Yes. Okay, so one thing about the backwards, this is a really great question. And I could go on about this for quite some time. I do feel like I need to expedite a little bit, so forgive my brevity here. The backwards focused megaphone is primarily appropriate for the narrow rearward focusing vowels, oohs, ohs, and the vowels that are in between those two on the spectrum. So we don't necessarily want that for every vowel sound, and that will change in degrees depending on where you are in your range. So if you're in the zona de passaggio or above the secondo passaggio, then more of that space may be required. Now, for the rest of the vowels above the secondo passaggio, you kind of want that space anyway. So it's more in the zona de passaggio and nearing the primo passaggio where there's a bit more of a difference in that space. Cultivating release of the rear of the tongue musculature and also an awareness of the nasal pharynx can be really, really helpful. So, you know that exercise about the soft palate? I think I used the NG sound for that, if I remember correctly. And so I had you singing, where it's very, very far forward to bring out more of the resonance, more of that singer's formant in the sound. If you reverse that, and I'm going to move a little closer to the mic, so hopefully you can hear the differences. Let's call this a forward-focused nasality, or that's not a good word. Forward-focused resonance. Pardon my slip there. Now, if I direct that further back, then I'm directing it more towards the nasal pharynx. The sound will dullen. By doing that, you can cultivate an awareness of the musculature that is lifting the nasal pharynx up and elevating it. And that will help you with the space in the top of the rear of the esophagus. That is part of that backwards facing megaphone that you're asking about. Now the tongue will fairly naturally descend for O vowels, and any vowel above the secondo passaggio is going to have an aspect of that. So the tongue position should be fairly easy to attain, but the problem is in having release of that tongue. So if it's really rigid and tight, then that can be problematic. E to U is a good way to cultivate some awareness of that. Pardon me. Practicing with that, you can feel the rear of the tongue moving around a little bit, and by becoming aware of it, learn to release some of that tongue tension. Also, I don't remember which video it is now, but there's a video where you take your knuckle and insert it. Be very gentle with yourself, but you do kind of have to get it in there. Insert it behind the chin bone, the jawbone, behind the chin, into where the tongue root is, the musculature where the tongue connects, and then sing your exercises. You can do whatever exercises you want, and keep it from popping out. The tendency on vowel changes will push it out, and become aware of that musculature and practice releasing it by trying to keep it from popping out. It's kind of challenging, but that's the practice that I've found successful. Yes, talking about vocal fatigue. This is Roberto. I do hip hop and rap music, so all my music is rather upbeat and somewhat forceful in my vocal folds. Yeah, well, I mean, you got a lot of things going on there. I mean, the overall engagement of the vocal fold. You know, when I've worked with clients who are doing really, really aggressive forms of music, not that it's like aggressive, like, but you know, when they're using their voice in a very full throttle kind of way, where they feel that belting is required, it becomes a little bit about damage control, and I basically double down on engagement and subglottic pressure to try to keep as much release as possible. In those forms of music, you have such short, your phrase lengths can be long, but the syllabic content of your material is rather short often. In other words, you're singing in really short, very choppy syllabic things. Cultivate I'm really on the word cultivate today. I hope that's not getting boring. Really conceptualize the phrase in a much longer way. Try to generate like a long view of where you are going so that you maintain more consistent overall abdominal engagement. What this will have to do is that it will minimize the amount of the disparity between when you are vocalizing, singing, hip-hopping, whatever the appropriate verb is. It'll minimize the amount of of back and forth between disengagement of the air column and engagement of the air column. That will have the effect of maintaining a more efficient vocal fold closure throughout the duration of the long phrase, which should help minimize some of the fatigue. Might not get rid of all of it, but it will help. Great question, man. Awesome question. Striker at Karina at me. Yes, epiglottis and the breath holding is great. I've worked over a year practicing holding my breath without engaging the epiglottis and is now foreign. I know it's really weird when that happens, but sometimes as I have carried on in my teaching, there are now certain incorrect practices that I have lost the ability to demonstrate. The glottal attack is not one of them. I don't remember what the other thing is that I was thinking of, but there are several different techniques that I can't do anymore. I think the most recent one was a lifted a high larynx position for singing. I can't really emulate that any longer. End up using a lot of effort to sing rap without much result. As if my vocal cords stop using airflow efficiently. That's entirely possible, Roberto. It's entirely possible. Be gentle with your body, though, as much as possible. Cultivate that long phrase concept. Striker at me for reference to the phrases "and every mother's child" from Christmas song. I'll have to listen to that. I don't know that off the top of my head. Is you're working on Mrs. Webster at Striker. Giuseppe, hello. Mrs. Webster, Sequencer, a Global Voice. Thank you for reminding me. Sequencer, a Global Voice, where you can keep the conversation going. A lot of people share different files. A lot of people, there's so many great vocalists in this community, and I try to chime in on Sequencer. I'm not awesome about it, but I do try to chime in from time to time. But there's so many really, really great vocalists who are training every single day. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious by the chat that some of the people here in the chat are also on Sequencer. I'm looking at you, Striker. And have a lot of great thoughts and have a lot of great information, and just it's not just me. There's a community of people that have a lot to offer, and we can all. I really, really believe that we all get better and better by having this discourse and this communication and going back and forth. Striker, Miss Webster. Cordarius, I'm a 15-year-old. I sing tenor and choir. I have bad tension with my swallowing muscles and a rising larynx, both of which affect my range greatly. What can I do to help myself reach higher notes easily? Cultivate good airflow, first and foremost. The other thing you can do is you can check out the videos that are on, I think it's called like How to Sing High Notes. How to Sing Over the Break. Those are some of the titles. Thing is, at 15, if you have gone through your... I'm assuming that you're male. If I'm incorrect about that, I apologize. But if you're a male singing tenor and choir and your voice has changed, it could still be some time before things settle down for you. If your voice hasn't changed yet, I'm surprised that you'd be having difficulties hitting the notes or singing the notes. Don't ever use the word hitting. But then check out the other videos. That can be very, very helpful. JC Red, Giuseppe, Karina Chen, the explanation is clear about closing in and epiglottis closure to get the correct glottal onset. Cool, thank you. Giuseppe, you're in! Congratulations, Giuseppe. That's awesome. Well done, you. David King, breathing for Brahms' Requiem. Legato means that I'm running out of breath. Is it fixable? I would believe. Whoa. Scrolling challenged. Yes, I have to believe it's fixable. I would have to look into it more specifically and understand more specifically what you are encountering, because inefficiencies in phrasing can take many, many forms. This is now probably a good time for me to mention again, if I do not get to your question, please drop it in the comments section. You can, copy and paste your thing from the chat and put it in the comments, or whatever, and I will answer your questions. I don't know why I didn't think about that sooner. It's taken me 73 live events to figure that one out. But then again, those of you who are on the newsletter got that a day early, and I still haven't figured that out. So it's a work in progress. FYI, I just want to publicly say thank you to those of you who make contributions to the channel via PayPal or the Cash App. It really, really helps keep this train a rolling, and I really, really appreciate it. It really, really does help keep everything moving forward, particularly as things break and need repairs. Case in point, the KSM32 instead of the 414. I still need to get that repaired. But I really, really appreciate it. Also, those of you who use the Cash App, I can't figure out how to get your email addresses to write a thank you. I make it a point to always write a thank you note personally to those people who choose to make a contribution. And I apologize unless I'm not doing it correctly or I haven't figured out how to get... The Cash App's kind of new for me, so I may just have not figured it out yet, but I haven't figured that out, and I apologize for not having that sorted just yet. Striker, at Mrs. Webster, forever in one day, re-recording this was funny. Irony of the song and the length you had to record was not lost on us. Thank you. At Karina, at Giuseppe, way to go, congratulations. Mr. Prater, thank you so much, you're very welcome. Giuseppe, thanks to all, obviously, thanks to Jeff teaching me a lot in this past 6 months. My pleasure, Giuseppe, my pleasure. Today, I scheduled it to post. So I post my videos 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings, Pacific Coast time, 6 p.m. UK time. I tried to switch it to Thursday so that the release in the release in my live event didn't coincide, but I just couldn't really do the Thursday release schedule. It doesn't work with my schedule at large, and I was getting really inconsistent with the video production and video release for the YouTube channel. So I went back to Saturdays, and I probably will stay there until something really different happens. Hey, Singwise Vocals. Many of you, thank you for joining us. Feel free to introduce yourself, Singwise Vocals. I don't. I make it a point. I respect people's anonymity unless they tell me that it's okay to identify them by name. But for those of you who haven't seen Singwise Vocals before, singing instructor, very similar, if I may say so, in the sort of ethos and mindset that I am from. Really excellent website with tons and tons of really good information. I would be surprised if you hadn't seen their work before, but please introduce yourself if you like Singwise Vocals. Mrs. Webster, Giuseppe, Bishy, J Official, does taking up acting help portray a song on stage? I don't see why not. I mean, certainly role-playing can have a lot of how we emote. And I'm reminded of Melissa Cross in her... If you haven't seen Melissa Cross, who's like she's like a New York vocal coach. If you haven't seen her Letterman interview from like a decade ago, it's really worth checking out because she really tells it like it is. And she teaches people like the Cookie Monster kind of singing thing, right? And what she says is the last step is putting the face on the front of it to make your audience look like you're about to, disgorge your vocal folds onto stage. So really, yes, I can see how that could really, really help. And also just bring you that much closer and that much more in tune with your own emotive capabilities and your feelings on things. Because as you display those kinds of emotions and stuff, you will find surprise when something catches you and generates a response. At Mrs. Webster, at Singwise Vocals, welcome, you're never too late. At JC Ray, Bishy J, does Justin Bieber have good vocal technique? I have no idea. I really haven't listened to him much at all. Karina Chen, hello Karen, so glad to see you here. Sing Wise Roses, Jason Ray, thanks. Yes, that's right, that's Karen. Sing Wise Vocals, hello Karina. Karina Chen, I watch your videos too, they get me interested in Harla Voce. There you go. Natasha Joubert, thank you Jeff, you're welcome. Sing Wise Vocals, Karina, hope that video helps to explain the concept. There you go. Giuseppe, Jeff, which is the correct way to approach the falsetto range with a partially adducted or complete adducted vocal folds? I can do in both ways, but in the first case, I can't maintain good intonation. Interesting. That's interesting. In falsetto, there is a partial separation of the vocal fold and a partial amount of dampening, and the cover or ligament on the outer surface area of the vocal fold takes on some of the vibratory responsibilities. So it may be that it's abducting too much. And if that's occurring, then I can understand why you would have intonation difficulties. Like so many things, I would have you start from the top down with like a lip trill exercise, or in particular, I really like the super lip trill when we're entering that next register of our voices above the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, because there's so much subglottic pressure required to allow the vocal fold to only abduct as much as is entirely necessary. Very interesting question. Very interesting question. Because at least in my studies, a completely adducted or completely closed vocal fold at that registration event is inconsistent with it. But it may be that they are abducting or separating too much for you to stay in tune, and that could be the problem. Start from the top down and then work your way back up towards it on ascending patterns. Start with the super lip trill, and then you might do like really fast. Those really, really fast patterns can help facilitate the transition through those registration events so that you're not overthinking it or trying to place it too much. When we try to, usually at that registration event, if we try to control it too much or try to place it very aggressively is when we get into trouble. That would be at least a way to start that. Giuseppe, yes, I like coffee so much. I have a saying, the third cup is almost always a mistake. And that's usually when I start to feel a little bit jittery. So yeah, if I stop at 2, usually no problems. Karina, thanks. You're welcome. Karina, AV testing. What is that? Audio-visual testing, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. Where's your Fitball? I know. Honestly, I couldn't keep it pumped up to where I liked it. I couldn't get my feet on the pedals of the piano the way I liked it. I think it's because I've got a wall like really close behind me, so I couldn't get things oriented. And then the other thing too is that for those of you who don't know, I have fraternal twin daughters. So I have twin daughters. They don't look alike. They don't look anything alike at all. But then they would fight over the Fitball. So we'd get these like Fitball fights happening because they would pull it out from behind the piano, and it's like it was just. I was like, I don't want that kind of, animosity. There's so many other things to concern ourselves with than the Fitball. So I just thought, but another thing too is that they would often like to lay on top of it, and then they would roll into the wall in the hallway. And it kind of made me worry that they were going to hurt themselves. So I'm like, all right, forget it. I'm sorry. I may bring back the Fitball. I see. You like the Fitball. JC's Radiant Ray likes the Fitball. I know. I liked it too, and quite frankly, my back felt a lot better. I think I tend to lean onto the piano and kind of arch my back too much. I felt my back felt a lot better for using the Fitball. All right, I'll think about it. I'll think about it, folks. I'll think about it. Need to control the Fitball. Akono, hey Jeff, just want to say thank you. Video is really helpful. Who are some of your favorite singers in popular music? Tom York, Sting. Jeff Buckley. Katie Lang. Oh my gosh. Katie Lang, man, killing it. I don't know her. I'm sorry. I don't know her name. The woman from the Weepies. I think she's beautiful. I think she's just beautiful. The vocals just so her and so individual and beautiful and lovely. Paul McCartney. Yeah. Carry on. Giuseppe, congratulations. Mrs. Webster, at Stryker, more explanation about how to align the vowels, please. Karina, doing the Melissa scales definitely help, but not sure whether the vowels are being aligned properly. That's why I ask. Well, first and foremost, start in the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. You're looking for consistent engagement of the air column and consistent response for the vowels. So the tone of your voice, or the timbre, if you will, is remaining consistent across the vowels. Okay. But here the best tip for alignment of vowels that I and let's just assume that we've got good subglottic pressure, good engagement, support, if you will. All right. The best and most effective thing that I can think of about alignment of vowels is to become aware of the height of the rear of your tongue as it either approaches the soft palate or descends. And allowing that to be in a more neutral position, so neither too high for the closed vowels like E, and neither too low for vowels like O, where it tends to want to sink, that will do a lot in terms of helping you to align your vowel sounds and get consistent response across your phonations. Without good airflow, however, you may not entirely be that successful. But Karina, from my understanding, you've been training your voice for many years, so it's not necessarily fair for me to assume, but I assume that you have reasonably good engagement of your airflow, your air column. And so generating heightened awareness of the height of the tongue, I think, will help a lot. It is very nearly time for me to go. It's actually a little bit overtime, and I realize I've kind of gone a little bit far behind. I'm just sort of skimming through here. But what I want to mention, if I don't get to your question, I am sorry, but get them in the comments. Drop me a comment so that I can respond to you. And that way, hopefully you've learned some things throughout the thing, but I still get to answer your question. It is really, really important to me to answer the question. So drop them in the comments and I'll happily answer your question. Let's see here quickly. I'm going to kind of go quickly here. Mrs. Webster, tongue tension exercise with your knuckle under the chin, is that popping out happen with one or two vowels more than others? E has a tendency to really engage the tongue root, but many people you'll get as many different approaches to an individual to a single vowel as you have different individuals. So while there are tendencies for the vowels, different languages, and so different accents in English language will have an impact on how that tongue gets used, and also just individual speaking patterns may have an impact on that as well. I find that the E vowel can be quite tricky to keep that in a neutral position. Some of the other vowels are much easier. You may start that exercise, by the way, with a single vowel without the change in the middle. The change in the middle will make it more challenging. At Mrs. Webster, we go maturity changes. Cliff, airflow. Stick to your airflow. Throughout that transition point, your voice is going to be really, really inconsistent. So stick to the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. That's anything below where the break is, but that's all going to change too as the vocal fold lengthens a little bit. Be patient and kind to yourself too. That's an exercise that I feel really comfortable recommending. Be patient and be kind to yourself during that transition, because you just can't do anything about the changes that are about to occur to your voice, and it'll be some time before it settles down. So work on your engagement, your understanding of airflow. Stick to your thyroid dominant singing voice, and just be patient. Mrs. Webster, good question at Cliff Roberts. Roberto, thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad. Excellent. Do you do neck stretches? I do this from time to time. When I'm getting warmed up, I'm moving all over the place. My right arm has a tendency to float for some reason. I don't know why that is. Those of you who work with me in lessons will see my arm sticking up in the air. I don't know, man. I don't question it. I guess better tension in the arm than in here, but ultimately better to be flexible overall. Congrats, JC's Radiant Ray. Cool, I'm watching your videos to improve my singing. Your classes are excellent. Girl. Bogota, first person identifying from Bogota. Welcome. I hope you're still there. So Jeff needs a techie wizard to teach him stuff just like that. Absolutely. Oh, so much to learn. Teach us some drive. I have resisted the temptation to teach you distortion because I haven't found a source reliable to my satisfaction that I feel can vet what I'm understanding the technique to be. I don't know, maybe, Karen, maybe you and I could have a discussion offline about that and see if we could collaborate or something on distortion or drive. Because I have, of course, there's lots of stuff to read about it, but I don't feel like I have the sources that I quote and rely upon to teach, and that have done the empirical investigations, and by empirical I mean sticking scopes down people's throats to come to an understanding of how the vocal apparatus operates. I don't feel there's been the same. Although, actually, now that I think about it, maybe there has been. I just haven't looked in the right spot. I'll have to think about that. Congrats, Giuseppe. Mrs. Webster, welcome. Singwise Vocals, love your work. High five. There you go. John Alexander Zaluga, I'm a baritone. Next week I'm recording a song on my band. Which tips and videos would you recommend? Thank you. I don't mean to be evasive, but whatever, if you're recording a song. So if that's one song, then figure out the overall range of that song, and then find the appropriate warm-up and technical exercises that correspond to that song. If your song has lots and lots of intervallic leaps and skips, then find out what that interval is. There's almost certainly an appropriate intervallic warm-up that will deal with that specific interval. Take an assessment of the vowel content of the lyrics of your song. Assess if there are any specific tendencies, specific vowels that are problematic or specific things about it, and then seek out the video that deals with those specific things. That's why there's so many warm-up videos, right? If you can't find what you're looking for, send an email to me and I can help you. I'm gonna sign off. I got into this today, and so I went a little bit over, but that's fine. Thank you so much, everybody. I really, really, really appreciate it. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question today, but just please put it over in the comments section, and I will answer it just as soon as I possibly can. A lot of new user IDs from the Ukraine. Welcome from the Ukraine. That's awesome. Awesome. And yes, I saw that, Karen. We do. That's good to know that I'm not speaking out of turn on working from the same manual. Brilliant. Thank you all so very much for joining me this morning. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your contributions to the channel, both in terms of questions, in suggestions, and those of you who have used PayPal or the Cash App to support the channel financially. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. Thank you very much. Really, really great session. I look forward to seeing you here next week, or seeing you in the comments, or of course find me on Twitter. Sequencer, a global voice, is where we can keep the ball rolling. Please feel free to join us there. That's really about it. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. I'll see you next week. Bye. enjoy singing. I'll see you next week.